They all had British accents, you know. Every single one of the American founding fathers, when they signed the Declaration of Independence in America in 1776, each and every single one of them, and those around them that celebrated that event on that day. I'm going to go for a walk around Eggleston Abbey, so I'll show you what that looks like. Every single one of them had a British accent. So you might be thinking, well, that makes perfect sense, because of course America had, until the day before the Declaration of Independence, been a British colony. True. However, it had been a British colony for a very long time, since the very early 1600s. So just like what happened in Australia happened in America, the accents developed and changed. However, in America, it was kind of more sophisticated, trendy, fashionable, if you like, a status symbol to maintain a British accent, an English accent. This is an interesting place, actually. What a lovely location. We've got the River Tees down there, just about, I don't know, 5-minute drive from my house. Built Eggleston Abbey in the 1100s, and of course demolished during the reign of King Henry VIII. Anyway, interestingly, when this was first built, America was what? About minus 700 years, 600 years old. Anyway, so yes, it was more fashionable to maintain an English accent. And so the accent changed a little bit, but not very much. If you met any of the founding fathers today and you spoke to them, you would assume they came from here, from England particularly, the British Isles more generally. And almost unbelievably but true, George Washington's family would have had a regional accent peculiar to this area, because George Washington's father and his 2 half-brothers went to school in a little village called Appleby, not more than 30 miles away from where we are. George Washington likely would have been sent to the school, the boarding school, but family circumstances dictated that he had to stay in Virginia. And of course the accent changed over time, and you might now be imagining that the accent by the early part of the 19th century became truly Americanized. Well, whilst researching this book, A Bash with the British Empire, I was astonished I want to show you this. That there is a knight's tomb, proper knight. Isn't that interesting? I love this place, great for the dog. She's around somewhere, you might see her. So what was I saying? Yeah, 19th century, you might assume that the American accent changed and became the American accent as we might know it today, because of the mass import of people from all over the world, not just the British Isles. Of course, there were people from elsewhere in the world arriving in America in the 17th and 18th century as well, but mainly they were from Britain. But in the 19th century, along come the Italians and the Dutch and the Germans and all sorts of people, the Spanish, anyone and everybody from around the world, which created the great melting pot of the United States of America, a country I love. I've had family there. We've had family connections there for about 150 years, and I've lived there. I love the place, right? So I'm fascinated by it. But I came up, when researching this book, with recordings of Americans in the mid-20th century sounding very British. These were older Americans. These were American Civil War veterans. I'm going to put some recordings here for you to listen to.
All right, well, tough. Yeah, boys and girls, 62 years ago, my Corps Commander, John A. Logan, issued an order that this 30th of May should be used as a Memorial Day in honor of the soldiers that fought during the Civil War. And every year since that, we have been observing this day. And it's spread all over the country, the boys and the girls, the men and the women everywhere, scattering flowers all over all the graves. It began this morning when the sun rose, and it spread all over the United States.
We were camped just north of Petersburg. General Grant began his invasion of that part of Virginia. We heard about it, and I remember very distinctly, one morning we heard that General Lee had crossed James up north and was coming down the Turnpike Road in the direction of Petersburg, just near us. And the next morning, happening to look while I was on guard, across the James River, there we saw long lines of blue. The infantry of the Army and the United States flags on the other side of the James, coming down to beyond the mouth of the Appomattox River that flows into the James, in order to cross on the pontoon bridges and thus begin the invasion of that part of Virginia. I was not with that part of the army. My regiment was moved up north of Virginia, out of Richmond, I mean, north of Richmond, and thus we guarded that city for several months while General Lee and General Grant were struggling there near Petersburg. While that was going on, there were some skirmishes and one, small battle I was in.
And the best of all best evidence to prove that the British accent was still alive and kicking as late as the 20th century, here is a recording of your great president, Theodore Roosevelt.
The acts of the court should be subject to and not above the final control of the people as a whole. I deny that the American people have surrendered to any set of men, no matter what their position or their character, the final right to determine those fundamental questions upon which free self-government ultimately depends. The people themselves must be the ultimate makers of their own constitution. And where their agents differ in their interpretations of the Constitution, the people themselves should be given the chance, after full and deliberate judgment, authoritatively to settle what interpretation it is that their representatives shall thereafter adopt.
Just beautiful voices. And you can hear, can't you, the Britishness coming through there in the old American accent. That accent that fizzled away by about the mid-20th century, I reckon. But, you know, for goodness sake, it clung on for a very long time, very many centuries. But the beautiful, delicious and fascinating irony here in the 21st century is this. The new American accent, this accent that we can all recognize, is, of course, a melting pot accent. Call it a colonial accent influenced by people from around the world. Now, that accent is influencing the rest of the world and all of the English-speaking world. So from South Africa to Australia, from Canada to Great Britain, here, the old country and Ireland, of course, and many others, we're changing the way that we deliver our language. Our accents, our intonations, our mannerisms are becoming very much more Americanized because of the great influence of America. So it's done full circle. My question to you is this: how long do you think it'll take, how many generations, before the rest of the English-speaking world all sound American?